It's great to see you here on a Sunday morning. Whether you're in Atlanta or elsewhere, it is great to have this opportunity to study together. I personally treasure every moment that we have together to study. I don't take this for granted. I appreciate the fact that we all have an opportunity to connect like this and to study some Kabbalah, study some deep Jewish spiritual wisdom that can help not only expand our minds, but also, as is the purpose of this particular series, to expand our hearts, to become more loving, more giving, more generous, more caring, more thoughtful, more considerate, more compassionate human beings. So this series is entitled Learning How to Love. And little did I know, when we started this series right after Simchat Torah, which is 8 months ago, little did I know how just incredibly timely this topic is. It seems like every day there is something that reminds us of our need to transcend difference and to really love and respect the other. And it can't just be a thing that we think about. It has to be a thing that we do. But Kabbalah always advocates the long, short way. There's a short, long way and a long, short way. A few weeks ago in a Tanya class, I described my recent example, my recent experience with a short, long way. What's a short, long way? A short, long way is a shortcut that you take to get somewhere, but in the end you never get there because you're obstructed from getting to where you're going. So like I was taking my kid, this is before Corona, or as we call it, BC. So before Corona, I was taking my kids to, one of my kids to a baseball game. Mendel, remember this? He's right here with me in the room. Anyway, taking him to a Little League game, and, you remember this? Yeah. So it was in Dunwoody, for those of you that know Atlanta. So we live in town, and Dunwoody might as well be, I don't know, Canada. It's far, relatively. So we drive to Dunwoody, and it's at one of these high school fields. Yeah, high school field? Middle school field? All right, who knows? Anyway, so I'm following Waze, or whatever it is for directions, and it shows me where I need to go. It shows me like the athletic field, the school and the fields. So I see like an opening, so I tell myself, why should I go around? It's like a big school, right? So why should I go to the light, make a left, go around, and then through that other entrance? There's an entrance right here. Right, and I saw right in front of me was another vehicle that clearly had the right markings on it with the stickers and the magnets that I knew was also going to the game. You know how you know when you know? You know what I'm talking about? You know when you know about the stickers or the thing where where people are going? Sometimes you know. Anyway, so this guy's going around the block. I'm thinking like I can totally take a shortcut here and cut out all that extra driving. Well, I do that, and as I pull in, I realized the parking lot is closed off and there's no access. So that's called the short, long way. You take a shortcut, but you never get there. There's the long, short way, which takes longer to get there, but once you're there, you're actually there. Right? So sometimes shortcuts work, sometimes they don't work. In life, let me rephrase that. In personal, character, and spiritual development, right, when it comes to working on ourselves, there's no shortcut. There's no shortcut. Any shortcuts will ultimately lead to lack of progress. That's the rule. That's the rule in personal development. If you are trying, especially spiritual development, if you're trying to game the system, oh hey, I got this great 2-day method to become a mensch. That's like that. It's not. There's no shortcut to personal development. It takes time. It takes development. It takes, in the language of Kabbalah, hitbonenut, which is meditation or contemplation. There's a path to get there. The path will get you there, but it's going to be, which means a path that is arucha uktsara, long yet short. In other words, long, but it's going to get you there. Why do I say that? Because our topic, learning how to love, which is again about transcending, let me tell you the mission statement of this series. It's about learning how to transcend difference and embrace the other. Camp or whatever camps you're talking about. Right? It's about transcending difference and embracing the other as oneself. So there are no shortcuts to this. And in Kabbalah and Hasidic development, this is something that requires a lot of thought and a lot of contemplation. And then there's a lot of mind work that needs to be done in this regard, and then a lot of heart work that needs to be done, changing the way we feel about ourselves and about others. And then that leads to action. So in general, the way a person's torso is as they are standing upright, where head lies above heart, which lies above the hands at rest and the feet at rest, right? So it's head, heart, extremities. So too is the progress or the process of human progress. First we have ideas, which translate into feelings, which then translate into action. You could try to cut things out and jumpstart the system, but it usually doesn't get you where you need to go, or it's not a lasting solution. It's the stuff that we build up that we achieve. There's a wonderful verse from Psalms: Mi ya'aleh v'har Hashem, u'mi yakum b'makom kadsho. Who will ascend the mountain of the Lord, and who will stand in His holy place? And it's explained that there are two elements here. There's climbing the mountain, and then there's standing in the place. It's easy sometimes to get up the mountain. You can take a shortcut. You can take one of those, what do you call them? Those, when you go to, what are those things called? Like those moving... Skylift. Yeah. Gondolas? Is that what they're called? Yes? Gondolas? I'm not sure. Whatever. You can take those guys up the mountain. So, Mi ya'aleh v'har Hashem, who will ascend the mountain? There are many ways to get up the mountain. But it's easy to get inspired about change. But it's harder to see that change through. It's harder to really see it through and to make sure that it truly gets implemented for the long haul. And that's the goal. The goal is not quick and easy, inspiration. Right? Quick and easy, let's... Not saying that that's not good at all. What I'm saying is that's not the ideal is not that it's quick and easy, but rather that it's long lasting. So this text, we've been at it for 8 months. We're up to chapter 20 and 21. There's 32 chapters total. By my estimations, it's going to be another several months at least. So we're talking about a year plus of study. By the way, I'm not saying this I'm only saying this in a positive way. I'm telling you right now, the scope of this. We're going to have a year plus every Sunday, pretty much every Sunday, with just a few exceptions, whatever, holidays or whatever. Every Sunday, the opportunity to focus for an hour and a half on caring about someone else, on the mitzvah of loving your fellow as yourself, the obligation to transcend difference and truly embrace the other as one with you. And I don't take this for granted. I don't take you for granted. I appreciate the fact that we have these opportunities. But let's speak about the topic today, which is complicated. The topic is called complicated. So, people are complicated. And what I mean by that, on many levels, people are complicated. But what I also mean about that is, sometimes many of us like or pride ourselves in being able to look at someone, talk to someone for a few minutes, and size them up. Oh, I got that person pegged. I got them sized up. Oh, I know exactly who they are. Right? People pride themselves on being able to read people. You ever have that thing where you can read someone right away? Yeah, you have a quick interaction, like, I got your number. I know exactly who you are and what you're about. Okay. How many times, this is by raise of hand or by wave, whether real or virtual, how many times has it happened to you where you thought you knew someone, you thought you figured them out, whether it's someone you just met or somebody even that you've known for a little while, and then they do something, they say something that completely catches you off guard? Has that ever happened to you where you thought you knew someone and then they do something or say something that catches you completely off guard? I'm not saying good or bad, I'm just saying different than what you were expecting. Raise your hand. Yeah? Okay. I'm assuming whoever didn't raise their hand, it's just because they didn't get around to it. Because I'm assuming that this is natural to the human condition. That everyone has had an experience where, you were caught by surprise. You thought you knew, and then suddenly something happens and you didn't realize. I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just saying different than what you thought. Now, let's analyze that for a moment. So what it means is, first of all, that our assessments of others are not ironclad, bulletproof, or 100%. What it means is people are, what's today's theme of the class, or the theme of today's class? Complicated. People are complicated. You try to box people into a box, and eventually, inevitably, what's going to happen is they're going to poke a hand out of that box and say, nope, I got something else going on over here. You thought you knew, you thought you figured it out. Not so. It's not the case. Because people are complicated. They don't fit into tidy little boxes. They don't fit into neat little spaces as we might have wanted them to. People are complicated. By the way, this is not only about other people. This is about you and I also. Yes, usually we like to create a safe space by speaking about other people, as people do. But let's speak about us. You are complicated. In a good way, by the way. I'm not saying this in a negative way. In a beautiful way. In a wonderful way. You're complicated and full of surprises. And sometimes, you surprise yourself also. And it's a lovely thing. I surprise myself all the time, right? Right, I surprised myself this morning when I had two of me appear on the screen, yeah? Or when you couldn't hear me for a little while. Anyway, I digress. The point is that we surprise ourselves all the time. We surprise ourselves, others surprise us, we surprise others. The whole thing is a surprise. It's wonderful, it's marvelous. It's the little joys of life. Because people are complicated. What's interesting is, if you really got to know somebody, you really got to their essence. Let me explain what I mean by essence. In Kabbalah, you have two phrases that are always used in conjunction with each other. Etzem and Gilui. Etzem would be spelled in English E-T-Z-E-M, Etzem. Gilui would be spelled G-I-L-U-Y, Gilui. So there's Etzem and Gilui. What are these two terms? Essence and revelation. So what are they? What do they mean? Essence is the core of a thing. Gilui, let me just do it in English. Essence is the core of a thing. Revelation is how that thing looks to others. So essence is what it is. Gilui is how others perceive it. Are you with me on that? Let me make this very personal, very real. There's who you are, and there's who other people think you are. Right? Those are two different things. There's who you actually are, and then there's who others think you are. There was a meme going around a few years ago, maybe even a number of years ago, what my mother thinks I am, what my brother thinks I am, what my sister thinks I am, and then what I really am. Right? It was like different panels, and it was always humorous. Whatever. So there's who we are, and then there's who others think we are. Here's the challenging thing in life. It's really hard to see someone's essence. Because what you're seeing usually is the Gilui, the revelation. In fact, Kabbalah says, Etzem bilti niskale, which is Hebrew for an essence state, does not come into revelation. What comes in a revealed state is the revelation. In other words, there's Etzem and Gilui, there's essence and revelation. What you see is the revelation part, not the essence part. So you can't see the essence. You can see manifestations that are coming from the essence, but that's not the essence itself. That's where the surprises come in. That's where it becomes complicated. You see, if you could truly glimpse the unglimpsable, if you could perceive the unperceivable, if you could behold the unbeholdable, i.e. the essence, then all of the different manifestations and revelations and expressions of the person would make complete sense. If you were at the core of that person's essence, then everything that came out from there would make total sense. But because we operate on a level that's from the outside in, so we look at certain manifestations of that person, and we start to create patterns around that manifestation, and we draw, it's like we're almost mapping them out, right? It's almost like, we have a big wall with a map, and we're saying, okay, they did this, they said that, they think this, they belong there, okay, boom, we got them pegged. But what we're operating off of is only things that they've revealed to us. But we don't know what's really inside them and driving them, and that's when out of nowhere, they come out and say something or do something or involved with something that you didn't see coming. Why? Because you weren't looking at essence. You were looking at revelation. And revelation for a while was in one direction, but now you see something else. But in truth, from that essence state, all of those things, including the new one that caught you by surprise, it's all consistent with the essence state. Is any of what I'm saying making sense? Yes? I know I'm speaking kind of in the theory of it, but I want to make sure that the words at least are making sense. So far, so good? Yes? Yes? Okay. I want to give you an example. I'm going to give you an example that's not a human example. I'm going to give you a different example from the natural world. I spent a lot of time trying to find an example for this, because these are very delicate Kabbalistic concepts. The topic of etzem and gilui, of essence and revelation, is a very complicated. It's a subtle concept, because I think most human beings don't think about it in these terms. You look at someone, okay, that's who they are. Kabbalah says no, that's what you're seeing them do. Even with, I'm not an expert in eyesight and vision, but my understanding is even when you see something, you're not seeing the thing, you're only seeing something of what that thing is giving off to you, or whatever, the way the light is. Okay, I'm not gonna wade into areas that are not my expertise, but my understanding is even when it comes to seeing things, there's a similar duality there. But I want to get back to something that I have a better handle on, and this is the example that I thought of. Let's talk about fire. Let's talk about fire. We know that fire is always it's a powerful symbol in Judaism. We have it in the Havdalah prayer every Saturday night. Fire is a powerful symbol. It says that one of the reasons why we do Havdalah, one of the reasons why we have the fire, the candle, Saturday nights, as we mark the end of Shabbat and our transition into the work week, is because Adam and Eve, back in the day, right, back in the beginning, Adam and Eve first created fire on that first Saturday night. So let me explain for a second, based on Kabbalah. It says that Adam and Eve, when they emerged, remember, they emerged on the sixth day of creation, which was Friday. Friday late morning, early afternoon. They had a few hours till Shabbat. Had they not sinned, they would have gone into Shabbat pure. The world then was bathed in light, not only physical light, but also spiritual light. From the moment they sinned by eating of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the tree that was represented by, or represented the forbidden fruit, from the moment that they stumbled in that area, the light that was shining was destined to be taken away from them. But God didn't take it away from them because they were entering into Shabbat. God didn't want them to enter into that first Shabbat in a depressed, sad state. So God left that light around. Again, not only physical light, but that spiritual aura. Then after Shabbat was when God took it away. And that's when Adam and Eve fell into a very sad state. So God consoled them and said, I'm going to teach you the secret of making fire. When you make fire, then at least on a physical level, you'll have some sort of warmth and light to illuminate your way and to warm you up on those cold days or cold nights. And that's why Motzei Shabbat every Saturday night, it's the anniversary of the first fire, the first human created fire. That's why we also light a fire and we say a blessing to God for giving us the wisdom to create fire and giving us the tools to create fire. And that's the blessing that we say as part of the Havdalah ceremony. So that's a little bit about the background of fire and the origins of fire and the blessing of fire. We don't bless fire, by the way. We bless God for creating the fire or creating the tools to have fire. Let's get back to fire, though, because fire does many different things, many of which are contradictory. You ever notice this? Okay, boil an egg in water, what happens? Take an egg, a raw egg, and you boil it in water. What happens to the egg? What happens to the egg? Unmute yourself. Let's do this as a chant, whatever. Call and repeat. What happens to the egg?
The protein all congeals together.
Good.
You boil an egg.
Good. It gets. Let's just say simply, it gets harder, right? It becomes like from a liquid. It becomes boiled. Yeah. So it becomes harder. It's soft. It's runny. It's liquidy, and then it becomes harder. Okay. What about this? Is again. These are the examples that I thought in my head. What happens if you take chocolate chips? Yeah, and put it in a, what do they call it? A double boiler? Is that the legal term for this? Who knows cooking? Double boiler? Yes? Yes? Help me out here, guys. Okay, fine. Listen, that's how you roll, folks. If you want to make melted chocolate chips and you're not using a microwave, you use a double boiler. You have a thing with water, huh?
Old school.
Yeah. Listen, that's how we roll. So you put the thing, you get the thing on top of it, you boil the water, and what happens? You start off as a solid. Yeah, you have chocolate chips. Define chocolate chips. I'm not asking you to define chocolate chips. I'm saying you have chocolate chips with definition. Can you bring me that new cereal? Thank you. But if you bring it to me, you have to make a cameo on screen. Okay, so you have things that have definition. Come on, I have to make a cameo. Guys, say hi to Shalom, my brave assistant this morning. Jump in. There you go. Thank you. So look what I have in my hand. I found this. I'm always on the lookout for. Okay, so let me backtrack. We have Shabbat is a very special day on many levels. So one of the ways we make it special for our kids is that's the one day a week in which we have the sweet cereal. Usually it's just the Cheerios, the cornflakes. I don't know if it's healthy or not, but the stuff without the extra sugar. On Shabbos, whatever. We have a little bit more stuff. So on Shabbos, I'm always on the lookout for Shabbat cereal. So this was this week's Shabbat cereal, brand new, Hershey's Kisses cereal. My kids apparently are do you like it? No. The kids are not so keen on it, whatever. Listen, I don't eat this stuff, so I just buy it and then they report back and then we know it's trial and error. So this week, it's a full box, which is never a good sign after All right, it's going everywhere. Anyway, we'll clean that up. The point is, it's a full box after Shabbat, which means clearly it wasn't a hit in the Sollish family. Not saying, by the way, what is that? Oh, Hershey Park. Oh, nice. I spent many a summer day in Hershey Park. Here's the deal. I have 1 point here. So Hershey's Kisses, right? Hershey's Kisses. Could you use as chocolate chips, or is it too fancy for that? Could you theoretically? Theoretically.
In theory, you could, but they're pretty big, and it'd be hard to beat them into whatever your recipe is. But yeah, in theory, you could. Or you
Okay.
could cut them in half.
Right. So with the right heat, right, with the right fire and the right water, like the right situation, you could totally. Well, not these guys. These guys are already like, I don't know how they make these. It's like just magic or whatever. But theoretically, you start off with a chocolate chip. It's got a definition to it. It's got a shape. Maybe it's a Hershey's Kisses. I don't know if you want to use it. But you can, and then what does heat do? What does fire do? It melts it down. So 1 second. I thought fire was a substance that made things harder. And now you're telling me that fire is melting things? Come on. We must be talking about two different fires here. There must be one type of fire that hardens and one type of fire that softens. Because how could the same substance or the same element do two contradictory things? You're telling me that fire can melt things down, but also harden things? That doesn't seem right. Something seems awry or amiss. Something seems a little suspicious here. The same substance or the same element of fire can do two contradictory things. To me, I would call that one word. Not one word, but the one word being complicated. I think that's complicated. I think fire is being complicated on me because I thought fire was a hardening agent. I thought fire, you put something in that's liquidy, that's soft, bam, that's going to get that thing toughened up. That's going to get that thing hard. Boiled the egg a little too long, can't even eat that thing anymore, right? So I thought that what did fire do? Made things harder. Suddenly I put in chocolate chips. Those things were already hard, but I wanted them like super titanium level hard. I wanted to use them as diamonds. I put them in the fire and they melted. What's going on? So here's the deal. The moment you try to figure out fire is the moment that you're confronted with paradox and complication and contradiction. Because you realize that fire is not the expression, fire is an essential element, and yeah, when that thing touches different things, they reveal a different power within the fire. Are you with me on that, what I just said? Yes? When you put fire to water into an egg, the egg is hardened. When you put fire to water to a chocolate chip, it softens. The fire changed? No, silly. Silly rabbit, tricks are for kids. Cereal theme. Kabbalah and cereal. That's, I think, the theme of today's class. There's talks with the Kabbalah Coffee that we're going to become serialized. Joking. Yes. Hold on 1 second. No, we first have to say hi, and then maybe we're going to discuss it. Okay, Reva wants to say hi to everybody. Say hi and good morning. Okay. You can't go on yet. You have to wait till 10:30. 20 minutes. Okay. So here's what's going on. The obvious answer is no, it's not the fire that's different. You're swapping out substances. So what are you hacking the chainik? That means banging on a tea kettle, which is Yiddish for driving me crazy. What are you hacking a chainik? Of course, when you put an egg in there, the egg is soft, it gets hard. That's the nature of the egg. When you put chocolate chips, it's hard and it becomes soft. That's the nature of the chocolate chip. It's not fire is different, the thing is different. Yes. Which leads me right into my point. Fire has one essence, whatever that is. But different ways that it's expressed when it comes in contact with different things. In other words, different things different substances bring out different realities or different potential or different powers from fire. Fire is fire. Fire is not multiple things, right? Fire is fire. Fire is one thing. It's one element. It's one essence, one essential element. The distinction that we have is in the realm of revelation, not in essence. In essence, fire is one. When I say one, I mean it's a single entity, a single element, right? When do you see differentiation? When do you see complication, paradox, contradiction, or different powers of fire? That's when fire touches different things. And when it touches different things, then it has a different effect on those different things. Which means that you could almost say that these items bring out a different element from fire, or of the fire itself. Eggs bring out one reality of fire. Chocolate chips bring out another reality of fire. Right? It's all in fire. But it takes something different to reveal this angle of fire. Put people in different circumstances than you're used to them in, and you might see them react in different ways. Did they change? Or is it that this circumstance brought out a truth of that person's essence that you didn't see before in the other context that you had before? But put them into this new context, and now it exposes something else. Good, bad, or ugly.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
Can I make a connection? I think to what you're
Absolutely,
saying.
sure.
It's as children are as language is developing, as children are developing language. This is the way what you're describing is really the way that distinction is made. So, for example, a young child might call everything with four legs a doggy. So, a horse is a doggy is a doggy, a cat is a doggy, and anything is. And then they begin to differentiate and to say this is a horsey and this is a doggy because the horsey is bigger, the doggy is smaller, or and so on and so forth. So that as they begin to develop language, the language is based on the distinction between things rather than necessarily the similarities.
Right. So Reva was listening very intensely because She now knows, Reva, do you know the difference between doggies and horsies? She does, right? She has lots of animals, not real ones yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. So we have this idea of essence, right? And then the distinction comes in, right? In essence, anything with four legs, right, is essentially of a similar nature, at least the way we start off, and then it becomes differentiated. We see people in similar ways. We see them, we get to know them, we see them in a single circumstance or in a single setting, and they appear one way to us, right? And then we see them in a different circumstance and something else comes out. And it's not because they change necessarily, but it's because the different circumstance brought out or revealed, I'm not even going to say another part of their essence, but their essence in that situation equals that. In other words, fire with egg equals hard-boiled eggs. Fire with chocolate equals melted chocolate chips. That's the way it is, right? It's not like the fire changed. The different things are being affected by the fire, but in doing so, and this is really the key point that I'm trying to bring out, these things reveal the nature of fire. If you didn't have anything applied to the fire, you wouldn't know what fire did, right? You might be able to observe the fire on one level, which, by the way, is still revelation. It's not essence. But you wouldn't know what fire does until you applied it to something. Like, I see fire. So again, that's still not essence. That's already revelation. But what does it do, which is a further definition of revelation? So you put paper on it. Okay, it burns the paper. I got that. It turns it to ashes. Okay, that's one thing it does. I put water in an egg. Okay, now I know what that does. It gets a hard-boiled egg. I put to get my double boiler situation worked up, I put chocolate or chocolate chips in there. Now I've melted chocolate. Okay, it does that. So all of these things are revealing what fire does, or on some level what fire is, but really more importantly what fire does. But each different application reveals another angle of the fire. The same thing is true again with people. People are who they are, and we only get to know them in certain circumstances, and then they might surprise us under different circumstances, when in truth it perhaps shouldn't be so surprising because that's who they are or who they were. It's just that you didn't see it in a different context. You didn't see them in a different context. Now you see them. Now you know another element of at least the revelation, and speaking a little bit to their essence state. All of this is an example, are examples. And by the way, I'm not going to state that these are good examples or perfect examples. These are very imperfect examples. But it's the best that I could think of to explain our discourse in talking about God. Because when we talk about God in Kabbalah, we also have etzem and gilui, essence and revelation. There's the essence of God, and that's the core, absolute, essential being of God, which we've referred to in our class fondly as God's isness, right? If you've been around Kabbalah Coffee for a little bit, you might have heard me say this before. So God is. Anything that you say after that is already too much of a definition, too much of a limitation on God. The truth is, even saying God is works against God isn't, which itself is now a limitation because you're saying God is as opposed to God isn't, and that also is some level of limitation. But nonetheless, what else are you going to do other than say something? So God is one of the purest ways of talking about God without defining God. So that might be God's essence on some level, or on a very imperfect level of expression. So there's God's essence, but then there's also God's revelation. In other words, how God appears to us, or what God does for us, right? How God is manifest. All of these are revelation, not essence. These are all forms of revelation of God, not essence of God. But, like in the example of fire in human beings, the revelation can tell you something about the essence, but sometimes the revelation is contradictory, which only tells you that the essence is a little bit more complicated or different than what you thought. And the one essence can produce sometimes contradictory and complicated revelations or manifestations, expressions. Okay, last week we introduced this incredible idea that God's essence, right? We're now referring to God's essence, back to God's essence. God's essence has two very different manifestations. There's only one essence, right? Not two essences. There's only one God, right? Only one essence. Like there's only one thing called fire. There's only one essence. But that essence necessitates two realities. Number one, or expresses itself in two ways. Number one, unlimited diversity. Right? God's essence, God is God, and God is so God, right? Infinite, that God can produce infinite items of expression. Finite creatures produce finite expression. Right? How many things can a person say or do at any given moment, or even throughout their lifetime? The number is going to be finite. How many things can God do? Infinite. So God's essence is revealed on some level in the creation of an almost, or maybe not almost, infinite number of beings. That speaks to God. You look around the universe, the galaxy, the solar system, you look around and you say, wow, there's a lot of stuff. I wonder where everything came from. And then Kabbalah says, you should know, this is an expression of God. Right? God is infinite. God is beyond all definition and limitation. So from God comes all of these things. Great. It's an expression of God. So an expression of God's essence is God's ability to create infinite. Another expression of God's essence is the notion of unity, oneness. This is also not a human reality. You see, we're very much split in different directions, at least in our behavior and our thoughts and our feelings. We have many different pieces, many different layers. We are composite beings. So we're composite beings, and the world is created from such diversity. At least it doesn't appear that there is this oneness, which we'll get to in a second about the truth of that. But God, on the other hand, God is pure oneness. God's essence is one. It's not multiple essences, as I said before. It's one essence. And this is expressed in the fact that even after you have diversity, infinite number of things, you still have unity, absolute, unflinching, unyielding unity that runs through everything. This unification, this absolute oneness that flows through everything despite its diversity. Both of these are qualities, and I hesitate to use that word. Both of these are qualities, expressions of God's essence. God's essence is both infinitely diverse and also exceptionally unified. And if you're wondering, well, how can both of those qualities exist in the same space, right? If it's God, if God's essence is a thing, how can it have both concepts of infinite diversity but also unflinching oneness that seems to be opposite directions? Either it's broad, or it's like a wide lens. I mean, like a flashlight. Like it's very dispersed, or it's like a laser, very focused. Which one is it? But like I said before about fire, this is why I gave the example of fire. Fire is one thing, and yet it both hardens and melts at the same time. Depending on what you're looking at, how you're looking at it, what you're applying to it, it has both of these expressions. And it's not because it's two different things. And it's not even doing two different things. Fire is fire. Depending on the lens, if you will, that you apply to it, you see a melting thing or a hardening thing. It just depends on what you're applying to it. The same thing is true with God. God's essence is God's essence. But when you look at it with this lens, you see infinite diversity. When you look at it through that lens, there's absolute oneness. And they're not a contradiction. They seem a contradiction through human perspective, through the human lens. Well, that's because we're limited in how we view things. And when we see contradictions, when things get complicated, we come to the single conclusion, we come to the immediate conclusion that there must be two of them, right? If I see two manifestations, if I see something that's complicated or contradictory, that tells me that there's two of them. There's two forces. There's two types of fire. The one type of fire is the fire that makes things harder, and a second type of fire is the fire that makes things softer. And you have to know how to create each one, right? When you use a match, it does this. When you use one of those clicker things, right? Not a lighter, but lighter, like one of those stick lighters, then it does the other thing. That would be silly to say that, right? It's not, fire is the same fire. Fire's not different. Two different fires. Fire is fire. Depends on what you apply to it. Is you see something else from fire. Fire has all of these potentials. Fire could make things hot, it can make things warm, it can make things soft, it can make things hard. Fire does all sorts of things. But all of them are unified, if you will, in the essence of fire. Different expressions, different conditions bring out different realities of fire. On a similar level, obviously not drawing a perfect parallel, on a similar level, we talk about the essence of God. The essence of God is one thing. It's not complicated. It's not, well, it is complicated, but we're not talking about multiple gods here. God A and God B, God 1 and God 2. That's not how Judaism rolls. God is God. God is one. One essence. But that one essence has expressions of multiplicity, aka diversity, but extreme diversity. I mean diversity from here to there, and all in the middle. You know, from one end of the spectrum to the other, and everything, every shade in the middle. That's the extreme diversity that God can produce. At the same time, God also has this expression of oneness, and both are true. And so last week we said that understanding the essence of God is to understand that both of these are realities. And if they seem like a paradox, don't be perturbed. Don't be surprised. In the space of paradox, that's when you know you're getting closer to God's essence. Because when you're not faced with paradox, it means you're hovering on the space outside. I'm going to say that one more time. When you're not confronted with paradox, it means that you're operating on a very external space where there's only one manifestation and only one expression. It's like you have one meeting with somebody and you get to know them a little bit and you say, oh yeah, I know who they are. And they're not complicated. I get a very clear picture of who they are. You know what that means? You don't know them. That means you don't know them. If you think they're easy and simple, it means that you only have one limited frame of reference, of vision, of insight into who they are. All you're seeing is one external. I'm trying to zoom out with my hand, right? So this would be in, this is out. You're looking at all the way out here at one thing. Imagine, they're reflecting. They have one essence, right? Everyone has one core essence. It's refracting all these different realities. You honed in on one of them, and you're like, oh yeah, very simple. Shkoyach, Mazel Tov. You honed in on one thing, it's simple. Of course it's simple. Over there, it's very simple. Move over, you see something else, now you're going to get all confused. So when you don't see paradox, when things are very clear and simple, it means that you're looking at things from a very simplistic level, a very superficial level. When you discover paradox, now you know you're getting a little bit deeper. In the space of paradox, you're now touching on essence. So when you look at God and you say, oh yeah, I know God. Sure, yeah, God does this, that, and the other. Yeah, God's that. You peg God, you understand, you've defined God. Guess what? You're all the way out there. You're all the way out there. You saw one thing and you chapped it. You grabbed onto that. That's why you're out there. That's why you think it's so simple. When you start learning more about God, as Kabbalah develops, and you notice, you begin to developing all of the nuances and all of the contradictions, and now you see paradox upon paradox, a paradox within a conundrum, within a riddle, within an enigma, or whatever that cliche is, Yeah, you see all of these layers of paradox. Oh, now you're getting closer to the essence. And it's not that the essence is complicated. The essence is pure. The essence is simple. It's just that when you apply the essence to different circumstances, different conditions, you see a bunch of different things. So, in short, let me give you the 30-second version of this. But I felt we did this a little bit last week, but I felt like this needed a lot more explanation, and I'm hoping I'm doing that this morning. The 30-second version is God. So there's pure divine essence. God is the source of incredible diversity and incredible oneness at the same time, and it's not a contradiction. When we talk about diversity, we're talking about all of the different forms of life, all of the different beings and created entities and atoms and molecules and quantum particles and whatnot. Yeah? How many quantum particles exist in the universe? Yeah. Put a number on that. Okay? You can't even put a number on that. It's nearly infinite. But for the sake of our context, since the universe, our knowledge of the universe is ever expanding, and we're discovering more and more and more, and other galaxies and solar systems, right? We keep on discovering more. So let's just use the language of Kabbalah and call it infinite. God has God has infinite expression. At the same time, God is absolute oneness, which seems to be a contradiction, because if it's one, then it's not infinite. It's not infinite expression. One is one. But both are true. And so here's where we get to the names of God, and this is really the key point. This is the big idea. Remember when I talked about eggs and chocolate before? It's my new shop, Eggs and Chocolate. It's like this food boutique. It's going to be this like breakfast and chocolate place. I'm joking. So eggs and chocolate. I'm giving you an idea. Anybody wants to run with it, run with it. Sounds a little bit bizarre, but who knows? It could just work. Look, eggs and chocolate. They don't create fire. They don't define fire. Do it. I don't know. Maybe if things get a little bit quieter, we'll see. So look, eggs and chocolate. They don't make the fire. They don't create the fire. They don't. They're not touching the essence of the fire. Fire is a fire. What are they doing? These are just items that when you apply them to the fire, or to the fire formula, like hot water or whatever, when you apply it to fire, you've revealed something that fire can do. And in the case of eggs and chocolate, you've revealed opposite things that fire can do. So these are not the fire themselves, obviously. Eggs are not fire, right? Chocolate's not fire. Although I understand the kids are now saying fire. Yeah, you know that? Kids are saying fire, F-I-Y-A. It's true. Maybe they were saying that. This might be the end of the curve on that one. Anyway, but if you're really cool, you use the emoji anyway, so who needs to say it? So these are not fire. But what they do in this context of my analogy is that they serve as revealers, points of revelation to reveal what fire can do under different circumstances. Here's the big idea. The same is true with God's names, God's divine, the divine names. The primary names of God are Havaya and Elokim. God's four-letter name, Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei, and God's other name, Elokim, which are the two most popular names of God used in Torah. I feel like we're talking about baby names. The two most popular names of 2020. No, the two most popular names in the Torah for God are Havaya and Elokim. What do they mean? They have many different translations. If you look in various Bible translations, you'll find them alternatively described as Lord and God, depending on which version. Some use God for this one and Lord for the other, and some reverse it, God for that one and Lord for the other. Why? Who decided? I have no idea. Your coin flip is as good as anyone else's coin flip. So the English translation is not going to help us when it comes to the difference between these two names of God. This, by the way, as I said many times, drove some scholars to conclude that the Bible was written by multiple authors and then cobbled together, and that's why you have different names of God, because they didn't notice the distinction or the subtleties between them. Kabbalah extensively speaks of this. And at the core, Havaya is always seen as the name that connotes God's oneness, and Elokim is the name that connotes the diversity. So we have, think about, let's go even deeper with the analogy. Chocolate is melted, let's call that diversity because it's expanding. And the egg is hardening, so let's call that oneness. You with me on what I'm doing here? I want to kind of match it up. Even if it's not accurate 100%, I want to match it up so conceptually we have symmetry. I want to create some intellectual, some conceptual symmetry here. So again, one more time, I'm going to say that again. When you take, because you take different chocolate chips, you melt them all together. It may not work. It doesn't matter. We're still going to go with this. Take chocolate and you melt it. I'm going to call that diversity. It's now like spreading out. That's how I'm terming diversity, spreading out. And the egg, which was otherwise could have been like, you crack an egg open, it goes everywhere. But when you hard boil it, now you crack it open, it remains in that space. We're going to call that unity. So one reveals the diversity of fire, if you will, and one reveals the unity of the fire. Now, the fire is not diverse or unified. The fire is fire, but it can produce, or it can manifest, or it can be revealed in both of these ways of expression. The same thing is true with divine essence. Again, obviously, on a much different level, a much greater level, etc. Lahavdil, to create a gulf of separation between the physical analogy and the spiritual or divine analog. But when it comes to God, we have a similar idea. And that is, the essence of God is the essence of God. But at the same time, or along with that, you also have two forms of manifestation. You have God revealing, God's essence being revealed in the process of diversity, of creating an infinite number of things. That reveals divine essence on one level, or the divine essence of plurality, or the divine potential of plurality. And then you have the notion of oneness. How even amidst all of this plurality, all this diversity, there's still oneness, and that brings out God's oneness. But both are divine powers. God's essence both has the ability to be diverse and the ability to be unified. Or more than unified, one. Unification still implies diversity. This is one, beyond unification even. Both of these are definitions, if not definitions, both of these are realities of the divine essence that are expressed by these two different names of God. This explains so much in the Torah. This explains the opening verses of the book of Genesis, where it uses the name Elokim. Bereshit, in the beginning, bara, created, Elokim. Elokim created. Why not Havaya? Why Elokim? Because what we're talking about is the diversity of the universe. God created this, and He created that, and created the other, all of these different things throughout 6 days of creation. All of this stuff God created, that is always coming from the divine essence at its core. Why is the name Elokim used? Because Elokim is like the chocolate, right? Lahavdil. Elokim is like the chocolate in that it expresses the diversity. The essence's power, God's essential power of diversity. And Havaya represents oneness. How even in a world that's so diverse, if you drill down, there's absolute oneness. Not just unity, but oneness. Oneness, I just want to clarify, I mentioned it before, I'll clarify one more time. Oneness is higher than unity. Unity still implies differentiation. Oneness implies there's not even differentiation. It's so one, it can't even be split apart. These two seemingly contradictory notions are both true in the divine essence, but are expressed with different names of God. So when God is creating the diversity of the universe, Elokim, you see diversity, God's power of diversity. When you have nonetheless this oneness in the world, Shema Yisrael, Havaya. Hashem, using the other name of God. The oneness, Hashem Echad, Havaya Echad, God is one. And everything in the universe is one. Not just unified, but one at its core. Which debunks another myth in Kabbalah. The great myth is, and this is something that this is an impression that you can get even when you study Kabbalah. That's why I'm calling it a great myth in Kabbalah. So if you study Kabbalah, you might have been under the impression that God's truth is one, and the diversity business is all like a distortion of God's truth. Like God is really one, and then you have another layer of diversity that spawns out from that oneness that kind of distorts it, and the goal is to get back to that oneness. In fact, even a few weeks ago, we gave an example in this class that almost leads to that erroneous conclusion. The example that I gave was light and prism, and the colors, the rainbow colors that can be manifest or revealed when you use a prism. Right? I gave this example. We have the pure light, and then it hits a prism, and it's refracted, and now you see all the different colors. And that analogy implies that there's the beginning, and then there's a next stage. There's how it started, and then how it got distorted or refracted. There's how it started, which is oneness. You didn't see different colors. It was all one. It was all together. It was all one. And then what happened was it got refracted. Something external, something foreign, something, a cover, a concealment, a distortion, a refraction was applied to it. And now you see diversity. That implies that the essence state is not diverse. The essence state is one. And the diversity is an add-on to that core oneness. Are you with me on what I'm saying now? And in truth, what we just revealed in chapter 20 of our text last week, and what I'm revealing again today, and I use that term revealing intentionally, what we're revealing is something much deeper than that previous understanding. And this is the great error, one of the great errors when we study Kabbalah, in erroneously coming to the conclusion that the truth of God's essence is the oneness, and the diversity is the add-on, the distortion, whatever. And that creates in our mind the notion that the goal is to get away from the diversity and back to the oneness. What we're saying here today, or in this chapter, is that God's essence contains both the power of oneness and the power of diversity. The power of diversity is no less a power and a force of the divine essence than is oneness. Are you with me on what I'm saying? Yes? God's essence contains both the potential for oneness as well as the potential for diversity. That's not an aftermarket add-on, like you bought your car and then you installed a cool souped-up stereo. No. This is something that's part and parcel of the essence itself. And if you're wondering, well, how can one essence contain both oneness and diversity? I refer you back to the first 35, 40 minutes of today's class. The whole point of the setup today, of the lead-in today, was to describe how an essence is only one thing. And when you think you have an essence figured out, it usually means because you're looking at it under one set of conditions. If you've only boiled eggs, then your understanding of fire is that it makes things harder. And that's not true. It can also melt. But if you've never applied chocolate to fire, then you've never encountered that property of fire, that reality of its essence. That doesn't make it less true. That just makes us less experienced. But it's no less part of God, of the essence of what fire is. As is the notions of unity, or not unity, oneness and diversity. They're both part of divine essence. And not part like a composite, like God's essence has one path and a second path. But God's essence has both. It's like fire. Fire doesn't have two different ways. Fire is fire. God's essence is God's essence. And the way it manifests, the way it comes out is in both diversity and in oneness. But again, the big idea here is, one of the big ideas, I think, there's a few big ideas today, but one big idea here is that it's not like the unity, the oneness is first, and the diversity is second, or second rate, or distortion, or less than, or no good. No. They're both equal expressions. It's not like fire primarily boils eggs, secondarily melts chocolate. What are you saying? That doesn't even make sense. Fire is fire. God is God. God both is oneness and is diversity. Which one came first? Which one came second? It's not even a question to ask. Fire, which one did fire do? Did it boil an egg or melt the chocolate first? The whole conversation doesn't make sense. It's not a valid question. It's not an intellectual. It's a nonsensical question. Fire is fire, and this is what it does. God is God, and this is the way God is manifest, both in diversity and in oneness. The names of these revelations are the two names of God. What are the labels? In food, we're calling it chocolate, eggs and chocolate. With God, we call it Havaya and Elokim. These are our two names. Havaya is the essence's expression of oneness, and Elokim is the essence expression of diversity. Both are true. Both are valid. Both are the same essence. It's not two different realities. I could say the same point uninterrupted for 365 days, and I believe that our minds, myself included, our minds still will have trouble grasping it. No, it's still two different things. No, it's one essence. Still two different things, right? Diversity and oneness. You must still mean there's two separate things. No, it's one. How does it make sense? How does it make sense that fire can melt and harden? It doesn't have to make sense. It is what it is. How does it make sense that a person said this and said that? It doesn't have to make sense. It's what it is. That this is who God is, or what God is. God is both unity and diversity. And so the name Havaya is no better than the name Elokim. It's no less divine than the name Elokim. It's like, no, Havaya is really God, because that's God's oneness, which is really God, and Elokim, which is creating the diversity, that's like fake God. That's like God distorted. That's not really God. That's like aftermarket add-on prism refraction. That's not really God. It's not true. That's not true. God is God. God's essence is God's essence. Two modalities of expression. Right? Same essence, expressing itself, different conditions, different circumstances, different ways. The names for these two forms of expression are literally the two names of God that we're talking about. Havaya, oneness, Elokim, diversity. Same essence, same God. And on the Aleinu prayer every single day, 3 times a day, we quote a verse. The verse from Deuteronomy. A second. In the Aleinu prayer every single day. That's the last prayer in the service. Morning, afternoon, evening, Shabbat, holiday, weekday, Yom Kippur. It doesn't matter. When you're praying, this is in the liturgy. The first paragraph of the Aleinu says, quoting from Deuteronomy 4:39. I'm giving you chapter and verse even. You can fact check me. Deuteronomy 4:39. It says, "Know this day and take unto your heart that the Lord is God." That the Lord is God. Wow, deep thoughts from Torah. You should know that the Lord is God. Oh, like what did I think? The Lord is not God. God is God. Wow. Blown away. Didn't see that coming. Huh. What are you going to tell me next? The car is a car? Oof. These are like deep ideas here. What's going on? But if you look at the Hebrew, you realize, no, it's not a game. V'yadaita hayoim. You shall know today. V'hashevosa elavavecha. And place it to your heart. Ki Havaya hu ha'elokim. That's mind-blowing. You should know here and take it to heart here. That Havaya is Elokim. You know what that means? That means that they're not different things. Havaya and Elokim are one. And diverse. They're both the same thing. They're both the same essence. They're revealing the same divine essence. Not two different gods, not two different forces, not two different powers. Again, I go back to the fire. You cannot tell me with a straight face that when you boil an egg or melt chocolate, you have different fires. Or that the fire somehow is, the fire itself is doing something differently. The fire is not doing anything differently. It depends what you're applying to the fire is where the distinction comes out. The fire itself is the same. V'yadaita hayoim, should know it today. V'hashevosa elavavecha, and take it to heart. Ki havaya, ki means that. Havaya hu ha'elokim. That havaya is Elokim. I don't know what the Bible theorists of the document hypotheses do with this verse, but I can't imagine they do anything that remotely resembles what we're talking about today with this. Where the Torah itself says that these two names of God, that you and I might think are totally different forces. They're one and the same. It's the same essence. It's the same, under different conditions, it's going to come out with a different expression. It's the same essence. The same deal. It's the same divine essence, same God. Havaya, you see the oneness. Elokim, you see the diversity. But there's no difference between the two. The difference is only out here. It's the same fire. You're boiling water. It's the same fire, even the same water that you're boiling. You put an egg in, it gets hard. You put another layer of chocolate chips on top, it gets soft. It's the same stuff. Different expression. Havaya and Elokim. So what does this all mean for us? Something very powerful. The diversity is real, and the oneness is real. That's the upshot of this. Diversity is real, and it's divine, and it's essence. It's not only like an aftermarket distortion. It's like God intended for everything to be one, and then somehow we got all this stuff. But that's not good. We want things as one. That's not the case. Sorry if I made that sound too convincing. That's not the real understanding of it. That the oneness, that oneness is where it's at, and diversity is a distortion. That's not the case. The truth is, the reality is, that diversity is part of the essence. And it's inherent to the essence, as is oneness. Which takes me back to our text, because now we need to learn inside and see how this is all expressed in our Kabbalistic text. Because what we're saying today is extremely powerful, and it has far-reaching implications for how we view ourselves, and more specifically how we view the other, and more specifically on whether or not there is an other, and what that all means. Okay, I'm scrolling on my own document, my own PDF, to chapter 20. We're going to get there in a second. I will get there in a second, and then I'm going to share my screen with you once I have the page. I want to tell you that you can always, at any time, if you want to study this text on your own, or see it outside of our conversations, this is freely available on Chabad.org. You can look for, just type in Chabad, Chabad, and the name of the discourse, which is called Hechaltzu in the Hebrew. And if you want to know what that looks like, then I will share my screen right now, and you can see in the header, one second, Riva, you will see what that looks like. Let's see if this works. Can you guys see my screen? Yes? Thumbs up? Fantastic. Let me make this larger so you can really see it. Oh, I got the English. An Ahavas Yisrael. Look at the previous page. At the top, that's how you spell it. Hey, Chaltzu. Heichaltzu. Hey, Chaltzu. That's the Hebrew name of this discourse. If you want to see it in the Hebrew, This is it right here. Hecholtzu ranat. That's what it is in the Hebrew. Hecholtzu ranat. Okay, so again, if you ever want to study, for those of you on YouTube, I know the folks on YouTube cannot see my screen because my screen is only on Zoom. It's not on YouTube. But you can follow along at any point in time. You can follow along at any point in time, freely and available. The book is out of print. It was a book published a few decades ago, but subsequently it's online with, of course, the blessing of the publishers, and that's what we're studying now. Let's look at this text over here. We did some of this last week, but I want to go through it. No, this is too far back. Actually, you know what? I'm going to skip around a little bit. So just work with me on skipping around. Take a look. Chapter 20 right at the bottom. I'm not going to read it straight through. I'm going to cut around, but stay with me on this. He says, this then is the difference between the name Havaya and the name Elokim. But look at the brackets. Both are expressions of God's infinity, more than infinity, of God's essence, though in different ways. Though in two different ways. Havaya elicits the unity of created beings, Elokim their diversity. And it's not even elicits, it's expresses. Havaya expresses the unity of reality, including God's essence, and Elokim, the power of diversity. And look at the next paragraph. Again, we did this last week, but I just want to review it. In truth, Havaya and Elokim are one. That's what we're talking about. That's the big idea. The name Elokim actually represents the infinite God, as does the name Havaya. Therefore, the name Elokim in no way conceals the name Havaya. In other words, Elokim is not a distortion. That's what it means. That's what it means by conceals. Otherwise, you would say, no, God is truly one or oneness, and Elokim, which is diversity, is a distortion. That kind of like pulls you away from God's truth. No. God's essence contains both the power of oneness and the power of diversity. So Elokim, which is the manifestation of such diversity, in other words, the application of such diversity, that in no way conceals the truth or the name Havaya. Let's continue. I told you I'm skipping around here a little bit. Look at this paragraph. However, right here, because the infinite God is perfectly all-encompassing, right? The infinite God is perfect. He contains within himself the potential of multiplicity without end or measure. At the same time, all that is comprised within him is one, in a state of absolute unity, Yachid. So it's absolute oneness and absolute diversity. And they're both are part of divine essence. It's not like one is more essence and one is less essence. They're both, Havaya and Elokim are one, because they're both expressions, equally valid expressions of God's reality. Take a look at this next paragraph. And if you don't see modern applications to what we're living through, I mean, I don't even know how to finish that sentence. It's so abundantly clear. Let me get this 175. A nice balance here with the size. Look at this. We cannot say that his unity negates the capacity for multiplicity. For within his perfection, he must contain this capacity too, yet at the same time a perfect unity. Yet he is at the same time a perfect unity. What we're saying here is that God is as much plurality as God is oneness. And if you think that's blasphemous because we're saying multiple gods, not saying multiple gods, saying the one God or the one divine essence, the pure, forget one because that's already a loaded term. The pure divine essence contains both diversity, multiplicity, as well as singularity, unity, or oneness. Both are true. And that's a factual statement. God's essence contains both this and this. We can, in human terms, we can be different. We can be radically different. But if we're going to be radically different, we have to know that we're radically one at the same time. You cannot have one without the other and that be valid. I'll say that one more time. If you believe in diversity, right, then you have to also believe in that radical oneness as well. If you believe in radical oneness, you have to give room for diversity. Anyone who says that because of unity, because of one God, I don't let you have your own expression, is denying an element within God's essence. I hope that point is clear. Anyone who says we need oneness, we need unity, and in order to achieve that, you can't think the way you think, you have to look the way that I look, because that's what oneness means, is denying a part of the essence of God, as valid as the oneness element of God. Does what I'm saying make sense? At the same time, to have diversity just for diversity's sake, to have multiplicity just for the sake of multiplicity, and not see the oneness within that diverse reality, is also to miss out on a truth. Spoken from God's terms, look at this, last paragraph right here on this page, we cannot say that his unity negates multiplicity. For within his perfection he must contain this capacity too, yet he is at the same time in perfect unity. Perfection, as explained elsewhere, entails the coexistence of opposites. All this is what we did last week. Let's jump into the new reading. We'll finish off chapter 20 and we'll set the stage for 21, which is unbelievable. We're going to talk about biology and in a powerful way next time. But before I set that up, let's finish this chapter. Let's start right here. We may say then that this paradox comes about through both the name Havaya and the name Elokim. The name Elokim reveals multiplicity, as I said before, right? Both are part of the divine essence. But the name Elokim reveals God's essential power of multiplicity, the existence of limitless creations. The name Havaya reveals unity, in that all the particular levels of the emanations and the creations are unified and included in the unity of the one, Yachid. The many particulars are truly one. It reveals the unity which is within Atzmut, God's essential being. Atzmus, or Atzmut, that's the name in Kabbalah for God's essence. If you want to know how to write God's essence, yeah, that's it. Right here. Atzmus, or with the Sephardi Havara, Sephardi pronunciation, is Atzmut. That's a reference to God's essence. Everything else is revelation. In the example I gave before, we have fire, which would be the essence power, and then you have boiling an egg or melting chocolate. Those would be the revelations or the manifestations or the things that it does, but not what it is. So Atzmut is God's essential being. Havaya and Elokim reveal different aspects of that one, of that essence of God. Now let's continue. This will take us to the end of the chapter and hopefully to a powerful takeaway. We may now better understand the meaning of the verse, Hear, O Israel, Shema Yisrael, etc. Havaya is Echad, Havaya is one. Why do we need to understand this better? It seems clear, right? No. It would seem to have been more appropriate. Oh, by the way, one second. Think about the Shema. I brought you the Aleinu before. Think about the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel, Havaya Elokeinu. Havaya is Elokeinu. Elokeinu is the plural of, or the possessive of Elokim. So even in the Shema we say Havaya is Elokeinu. These two names are really the same. Anyway, I digress. Back to this paragraph. We may now better understand the meaning of the verse, Hear, O Israel, etc. Havaya is Echad, Havaya is one. It would seem to have been more appropriate to say that Havaya is Yachid. In the Hebrew, grammatically, it would be more correct to say Havaya Yachid than Havaya Echad. Why? Because Yachid is a term that implies a greater degree of unity than the word Echad. The difference between these terms is well known and is discussed elsewhere. So he's asking a question now. Yachid means singular or singularity. There's one and there's only one. There's not even a two. Echad is usually Echad, Shtayim, one, two. One implies a two. I'll just say that one more time. Two Hebrew terms. Yachid implies singularity. Echad implies one, of which there might be a two, a three, and a four. So when we talk about God, we should have said Havaya Yachid. Havaya is singularity, not one, which could imply a two, but the only one. So why do we say Hashem Echad, Havaya Echad? So he answers, this is the answer. I wish I would have broken this up into a different paragraph and put a question mark after the question, but you got to know how to read it. Actually, the answer is, the term Echad as used here is on the level of Yachid. So he answers, no, Echad here does mean Yachid. Of such a one, quote unquote one, it is said there is a one and not another. So this is not the type of one that implies a two and a three, like when you're counting, right? You start counting multiple things. You're like, okay, 1, 2, 3. So that first thing that you called one, you knew was going to be followed by a 2 and a 3. The one is not an only one. It's a one that implies a 2 and a 3, or other things. He says, he answers. So why is, when we refer to God in the Shema, why do we use the term that implies more stuff when we're trying to talk about God's oneness? He says, no, in truth, this one of God, this echad of God, is really the type of echad where it says in, I believe it's Proverbs, let's see. Yeah, no, Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, it says, Yesh echad, let's see, the original, it says, Yesh echad ve'ein sheni lo. There is a one that there is no second to. Sometimes there's an echad that implies a two, a one that applies to. Sometimes there's an echad of which there's no two. So that's the type of echad that we're using to refer to God in the Shema. For this is not, back inside right here, for this is not a one in the sense of a first number, nor is it a one composed of many conglomerate parts, like the oneness, the unity within diversity. For the particulars of echad are multiplicity as it exists. Oh, why not? Because the particulars of echad, of this echad, are multiplicity as it exists on the level of atzmut. This is referring to the oneness of the diversity on the level of God's essence. And since the name Havaya reveals unity in God's essence, Atzmos, hence the term Echad is used here is on the level of Yachin and does not signify a one composed of conglomerate parts. So what he's saying here is that when it comes to the Shema, and we refer to Hashem, Havaya and Elokim or Elokenu, refer to these two names of God, yeah? And we say that Havaya is Echad. The echad here is not the one of a 2 and a 3, but the one of an only one. How do we know this? Because Havaya here is referring to the power of unity within God's essence. And that unity is absolute unity and not a composite unity. So it's obviously a yachid type unity and not an echad type unity. So why does it say echad? That's the big question. If that's the meaning of it, so why doesn't it just use the more accurate Hebrew term, yachid? So this is the big finish. The verse nevertheless says Havaya echad. Why echad? Which could give a misconstrued understanding, precisely because the unity of the name Havaya is manifest when the particular levels of the emanated and created beings are revealed and unified and united by the name Havaya stated above. When does Havaya earn its paycheck? It's when you have Elokim, which creates diversity, and then you see the Havaya, which is God's essential power of oneness. So it's not the oneness, it's not you're taking many things and putting them together. No, it's a much deeper form of oneness. It's a oneness that you know essentially, even though there's diversity, there's absolute oneness, which is the paradox of the divine essence, which is fine. We can live with this paradox, like we live with the paradox of fire. It melts and it separates and brings things together, or hardens and melts at the same time. It's not a paradox, it's just fire. So God's essence, atzmut, God's essence, both has the power of diversity, but also the power of unity, but not just unity of diverse parts, but an absolute unity, a yachid unity. But where do you see that, and where does that become manifest as a chidush, as a wow, in the space of Elokim, in the space of diversity? If you can see within the space of diversity, not just different pieces coming together, but a oneness at its core, that's when you find the divine essence. That's why the verse says, Havaya echad. I'm going to read it one more time. Precisely because the unity of the name Havaya is manifest when the particular levels of the animated and created beings are revealed and united by the name Havaya stated above. Final paragraph. This then is why the phrase Havaya echad is used. If the term Yachid had been used, it would not have indicated a revelation of particular levels, but only the level of Atzmut, God's essential being as it is within itself. In other words, you would never have known about the existence of the diversity and nonetheless the fierce unity within the diversity, you would have just seen God's pure essence and God's pure essence as a oneness and not as a diversity. The phrase Havaya Echad shows that even after the particular levels of the enemy emanated and created beings have been revealed, those diverse particulars are nevertheless all incorporated in the name Havaya in the absolute unity called Yachid, which is really an essential unity of the divine essence. In short, there are different ways in which you can understand the interplay between Elokim and Havaya even after the big reveal of today's class. Even after knowing that they both come from the divine essence, you could still misconstrue and think that first you have God's oneness, then you have diversity, and the goal is to take all the different pieces and to once again unify them, to bring them together as one. And he says, no, that's not actually the big goal. The big goal is not to unify all of the diversity created from Havaya, from Elokim. That's not the goal. The goal is to reveal how within the diversity, it's all the same oneness and singularity. I cannot tell you how much deeper that is than the other thing that I just mentioned. It's one thing to say I have all of these different parts, different puzzle pieces, but you know what? They all fit together. It's another to say, and a much more radical idea to say, that all of the diverse beings and pieces that you see, look a little bit more closely, and they're all the same piece. That's the idea of today's class. Can you imagine a world in which we looked at ourselves this way? Or a world in which we looked at the other this way? Not just, again, take it through the journey. It's not just that God is one. And it's not just that on top of God's oneness was created this diversity. And it's not just that, no, God's essence also demands diversity, so diversity is also holy. And it's not just that once you have the diversity, the goal is to unify the diversity and to realize how we can all get along, notwithstanding our differences. But the deepest level here is to understand that within everything are both elements or both truths of the divine essence. The divine essence might be manifest to a greater extent in one place versus another, but the essence is present in everything as it is. So in everything as it is, you have both forces radically present, the diversity and the absolute unity within the very same space. If you and I had that vision, this is what the world would look like. The world would look like a place that radically embraces the diversity of the other as something divine, as something not distorted, a distortion from the divine. Like, things should have only looked one way. Well, now it looks different ways, but those things are like messed up. It's not the way it's supposed to look. We wouldn't look at things or people as being different, as being other, as being a deviation from what should be. We would embrace the diversity as divine, as godly. As God is God, diversity is godly. As God's essence exists, is real, so too is what else is real is the diversity. That's absolutely godly. And at the same time, we would know to not only recognize that diversity of the other's reality is absolutely divine, we would also know that the other is absolutely me, is absolutely the same as me, is one with me. In this space exists both the diversity and the oneness. And it's not just we're trying to figure out a way how to get along. I'm not saying that can't be step one, that probably needs to be step one. But in truth, at the core, it's a much more radical way of looking at it. It's that we all are different and we all are one in the same space at the same time as dual expressions of the same divine essence. Radical love, radical tolerance, radical acceptance, radical diversity, radical unity, radical oneness. I know I'm using the word radical a lot today because today, in my opinion, is one of the most radical teachings that you will ever find in Kabbalah. Even within Kabbalah, like I mentioned earlier in the class, you can have a misconception and completely miss the depth of what we taught today, of what we hopefully learned today. So, in conclusion, we need to move from a space. Well, it's interesting. It's not to eliminate the other, because that would eliminate diversity, and that's also going against the divine essence. So it's not eliminating the other, but it's eliminating the other of the other. And it's discovering the unity, the oneness, the yachid, really, within the other. That's the same oneness as within yourself. So these are the ideas. As I said this morning at the beginning, the goal is to move from here to here. From head to heart to torso to action. That's the goal. If something remains in the head, then it's not going to have an effect, and then it's gone to waste. It might have been a nice idea to study, it might have been a nice idea to contemplate, but if it's not having an effect, then it's a big waste. It's a missed opportunity at the very least. So my blessing for us all is to take these ideas and think about them. And think about what they mean for us and how we look at ourselves and how we look at others. And how we look at the world around us and society around us. And really think about, am I living in my own life? Even if I can't change every heart and every mind yet. But can I impress upon my own mind and heart these truths? Can I come to a greater understanding? Can I come to a greater embracing of this truth, of this reality? That indeed God's essence demands both diversity and fierce unity at the same time. Can I get myself on board with that? If I can get myself on board with that, that's a great start. And now we can get the next person on board and the next person on board. And then it's not only being on board intellectually, but also emotionally, and it affects the way we are, the way we live, the way we treat others. When you see someone else, what is even if it's not a thing that you think about consciously, how do you relate? How do you exist in that space, in that moment? The way we think affects the way we feel, affects the way we act. This is the long, short way. Next week, we're going to further this notion. We're going to continue this discussion. And we're going to talk about the first two letters of the name Havaya, the Yud and the Hey. And we're going to reveal incredible ideas, incredible truths behind God's name, Havaya, and the first two letters. And I'm very excited about this, because something that's taught in ancient Kabbalah, I just Googled this morning, not that Wikipedia is necessarily, or whatever it is necessarily the authority on human biology. But I discovered we have others in our midst right now that are greater experts on this, in my opinion. Nonetheless, I found something this morning that corroborates something that's taught in ancient Talmudic and Kabbalistic teachings, specifically regarding the origins of life and conception. We'll talk about this next week. We'll talk about the Yud and the Hey. We'll talk about the creative process once more. We'll talk about Tzimtzum. We're going to have a lot of amazing discussions, but it's all that we have to keep our eye on the prize. We have to keep our minds focused here. The goal is, it's all about understanding unity and diversity and how these two work together. They're not contradictions. Thank you very much for joining me today. Along these lines, I must mention, hopefully Thursday, pencil this in with a pencil to be erased, because I don't have yet confirmation. But I'm working on having a community event online, a community forum with leaders that were instrumental in healing the tensions, the racial tensions in the Crown Heights riots in 1991. There were riots in Crown Heights between the various communities, racially based, and there were leaders amongst the Jewish community, amongst the African American community, that came together and found a way forward and a way to heal the communities. Hopefully, if this works out, we'll have an event Thursday night, which will be a forum, a platform for these individuals, these community leaders, to speak about their experiences on the ground, in opening up dialogue, in real solution-oriented conversation, and try to help us on all levels move forward in a healthier way, have better understanding of what's going on, better appreciation for the situation on the ground, and specifically about moving forward and coming to some sort of better understanding of a path forward. So that is the goal for Thursday night. But that's a little bit, it's a few days away, so we still have some time to talk about that. Two more things I want to mention. Tonight at 7 p.m., we have our Jewish fireside chat with Mrs. Shandy Jacobson. She is an acclaimed international scholar, accomplished musician and composer, and her topic is everything I know about happiness I learned from sadness. So it's about transforming sadness and pain to joy and breakthrough. That is tonight at 7 p.m. It's a very timely topic, it's a very personal topic, and she is an incredible educator, communicator. 7 p.m., look on our website, intownjewishacademy.org, look for Jewish Fireside Chat. The Zoom link is right there. If you need the link, email me, call me, text me, I'll give you the link. Log on 7 p.m., join us for this memorable Fireside Chat. Final announcement is next Sunday, we are, please God, going to be having a day of learning and a day of inspiration in preparation for the third day of Tammuz, which is the anniversary of the passing of the great Chabad leader, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, of blessed memory. And we're going to have a series of classes in the morning, and as well as an evening program. So actually, Kabbalah Coffee, we will not be having this format of Kabbalah with this exact topic next week. We're going to be focused on teachings of the Rabbi, as you'll see next week. We have different teachers on the hour giving different classes. Stay tuned for more information. It's very exciting. We have teachers from South Africa. We have teachers from across the United States that will be presenting, as well as local teachers in Atlanta on the hour for a few hours in the morning. And then in the evening, we have Rabbi Manis Friedman, who's one of the great scholars of our time, who will be leading a talk and a farbrengen at 7 p.m. next Sunday. So stay tuned for that information. There's a lot of stuff going on, so stay tuned, and I look forward to seeing you all very soon. Have a wonderful week, Shavua Tov. Have a peaceful week. Have a loving week. Have a healthy week, and I'll see you all soon. Hope to see you tonight at the fireside. All right. Take care. Oh, Shavua Tov. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye. We'll see you soon. Take care.